I'm with Nathan Flowers of Social Media Labs at Oxford Jam, and we've been talking about ClimateGate and the way that that story about emails exploded on the blogosphere with climate change skeptics picking up the story, getting it into mainstream media and having enormous impact. I think you've been researching how that happened. First of all, Nathan, tell me, recap on the story there, and then tell me a bit about how you're analysing that and what these sorts of activities mean now.
Yeah, well, the actual story itself was last November. Some emails were released onto the internet by that were from the Climate Research Unit in East Anglia, which essentially showed that some fairly untransparent processes were taking place in terms of scientific research in the climate change field. Now, actually what those emails meant was was not that important to the actual story. So climate skeptics online got these emails very quickly and passed them around and researched them and worked out exactly what was going on. Within a day, they'd got the frame of ClimateGate. So that was off a website called What's Up With That, and about 10 comments down, the first story published on What's Up With That was a comment by Bulldust who stated, when will this be called ClimateGate? That then went into the media mainstream via the Telegraph, where James Dellingpole wrote, ClimateGate, the final nail in the anthropogenic global warming coffin. That was the story that then went global, and everyone published off the back of that. So the first thing I kind of think about is that the organisation that was formed by doing that was very important, in that they did know each other very well and they could act very quickly. So these climate skeptics knew exactly where to go and what to do. Now, the actual the frame of ClimateGate became very important, and just to mention the speed of that, now there are sort of 2 million hits on Google for ClimateGate, and there are about 28,000 blog posts, and there are something like 4,000 news stories, all featuring the term ClimateGate as the skeptic frame to that email release. It actually turned out, and some fairly eminent scientists at NASA went through those emails and found very little that was wrong. In the actual parliamentary inquiry, there was very little that was wrong with the actual scientists involved. So the actual story was not that important in terms of scientific, scientific rigor, in terms of the way science is done, but in terms of an internet phenomenon, in changing public perception, it was incredibly successful.
And from your research, what lessons have you drawn for how to counter those sorts of activities, if you want to? How are you thinking about it? How are you describing it? Because I know you studied biology, so you're bringing different ways of thinking about networks and describing what happens in networks to this.
Precisely. Well, I think the best analogy I've found for these kind of people is that they are sort of social insurgents, in that they are incredibly smart, incredibly well motivated, and incredibly knowledgeable about the field they're fighting for. But they will also take full advantage of the social media space. So there's some clear research stating that bloggers don't necessarily follow the rules of things like copyright, defamation, and libel that a mainstream publisher would. So that's the kind of problem. And what we describe as sort of social insurgents, that they're forming together as a kind of terrorist organisation. Now, this is what I've taken from studying guerrilla warfare. And this is exactly what they're doing. They're going for they're going for the most important pieces. They're going for the IPCC in terms of climate change. They're going for then the climate change units. Then they're going for the scientists. So from the top down, they're going for maximum impact for minimum effort. And then just seeing what happens. It's this kind of boiler room system that they've got to keep putting things through this mill. That some things work and some things don't. But the fact that they keep throwing stuff through it is what gives it such power. And the speed in which they act is absolutely unbelievable. It took 4 days for anyone to publish from a climate supporter background. So it took 4 days of this silence, this vacuum, which is it's as good as admitting that there's something wrong. But it actually took 4 days to crunch the data, whereas the skeptics took about 2 hours. That's the power of these sort of social insurgents.
And the standard kind of PR tactics of rebuttal, which you would normally deploy in mainstream media, I guess are ineffective.
Completely. They just don't really work. And that I was talking about sort of a Samsung case with an oil spill. A Samsung tanker spilled some oil off Korea, and it showed there that the bloggers, the news agenda, printed all of the kind of rebuttals from the PR, but the bloggers didn't, and they in fact fabricated some information as well. And these are the problems that you have, that they just won't play the game as a normal publisher will, because they have something to lose. Bloggers don't. There is no comeback. There is no legal case to be held against a blogger who's simply working out of their bedroom or their office.
So what, if whether you're a climate campaigner or corporate organisation or political party or anyone in this situation being attacked by insurgents, what strategy can you adopt now?
Well, I think there's a few things you can do. And interestingly, the actual climate supporter base is huge. And it dwarfs the skeptic network by times of thousands. But the problem with that is that they're just not joined together. So the first thing would be to network, would to get together all of those disparate parties and have a set of rules of engagement to work with each other, to share information and use that. And then suddenly you've got the strength in numbers that the skeptics have got. And in fact, it should be quicker, should be faster, should be better. But then you have the problem of, should you actually fight these skeptics? In that so if they're called counterinsurgents, and this is kind of terrorism, you can do counter-terrorism. Now the problem with that is that suddenly, as a big organisation, you don't want to be seen as sort of crushing these people. So no one ever roots for Goliath in a David and Goliath battle. So perception-wise, that's a difficult thing to do. So one thing is to get networked and maybe set up counter-insurgency bodies that are on their own, that are kind of quite secretive, and to fight sort of fairly with the insurgents. And or the other option is to start to go into a process of conflict resolution, to bring them in, start a dialogue, and have this set framework to have a discussion about what their problems are, what their issues are, and what you can bring to the table, and how you can essentially act as a resource to each other. In the climate change debate, there is undoubtedly a huge benefit from the skeptics in that the science has improved. I think there are around 40 to 50 papers in the IPCC report of, I think, 1,500 papers that were not peer-reviewed. They were only pointed out by the climate skeptics. That kind of thing has made that science better. So they do have a role. They can make the discussion better and improve it for the greater good, but it's bringing them in and not leaving them outside the fold. The number one message is kind of doing nothing doesn't work anymore, and that if you're in a fight, then you have to do something. If you're getting attacked, you have to do something about it. And standard PR generally doesn't really work.
And just trying to pick people off on their own ground, very moving target, isn't going to work. What I hear you saying, you've got to try and create a space which the social insurgents are prepared to come into, and you can kind of jointly agree some rules of engagement, agree to disagree, or whatever, and so forth. There'll still be a lot of people outside that, but that maybe gives you a bit more leverage.
Exactly. I think once you get some people on side, then you become the bigger party. You would only need a few of these sort of skeptics or insurgents to be at your table in order to get huge credibility. And once you start getting them, then you create momentum to trickle the other way, to actually start getting a consensus between the skeptics and the supporters, which is better for everyone.